wonderful new year. It's with love to, or from love. All of you, thanks for staying with us. We'll cross over to Parliament in a bit, of course. Do stay with us for the rest of our programming on this channel.
Imagine a family without a home. Imagine a song without a voice. Imagine a church without prayers. Imagine a government without citizens.
Imagine democracy without journalists. Imagine a world without the media. Life is full of issues and stories about people, communities, and governments.
Stories that have to be told by well-trained journalists. That's why you can't imagine news without Joy News.
Pascal Service says that Ghana's economy is growing at 5.7%. So what President Mahama left us of 3.4% has been upgraded, increased to 5.7%. Not just that, in terms of the nominal GDP, which measures the size of our economy, President Mahama left us with a GDP of $219 billion cedis. Today, Akufo-Addo has increased that size of the economy with a nominal GDP of 1.2 trillion cedis.
the big question is whether or not it's come with the tangibles for the ordinary Ghanaian. Some of these growth figures, GDP growth of 5% you speak of, has not come directly with growth, and this growth has been linked to the mining and quarrying sectors, which have not been something that's come along with job creation and the likes. There's been debts which have plagued this economy by and large, which has been spoken to. And so yes, there may have been growth. Yes, the economy in nominal terms may have reached $1 trillion. This government says there are teething problems and we're still not out of the woods yet.
There's no government that will not have teething problems. You cannot have an economy grow from 219 billion to 1.2 trillion and not expect to see significant improvements. That is why you are seeing that the NPP government provided the largest number of ambulances that Ghana had never had. The largest number of school infrastructure that has never been witnessed in this country. Largest number of hospitals that have never been witnessed in this country. The largest number of roads that had never been witnessed in this country. So the evidence is there for everybody to see. The provision of safety nets in terms of social interventions, everybody knows that if you want to compare any government with Kwame Nkrumah, it is the Akufo-Addo and the NPP government that has provided the most social safety nets to the people of this country. So, a 1.2 trillion nominal GDP cannot be washed away. Okay, that's the most important thing, that you should know that is the asset that President Akufo-Addo and the NPP have bequeathed to President Mahama. President Mahama, when he was leaving office, did not leave us this huge asset as Akufo-Addo has bequeathed the country.
Let's final question with respect to inflation targets, and we've heard the minister mention something in the regions of 8% by end of this fiscal year. Ambitious or achievable, considering the statistical service pegged February inflation at 23.1%?
It's not ambitious. It's the foundation that the NPP government has laid that is seeing that significant drop in inflation. Remember, in 2022, following the Russian-Ukraine crisis, Ghana's inflation, like that of UK, America, and all other countries, skyrocketed. In our case, it went to 54%. Gradually, from 2002, 2003 to 2024, we have seen inflation drop from 54% to 23%. That is unprecedented. That is the sharpest drop, a turnaround following crisis for an African country. And that drop in inflation is expected to continue this year. And that is why the IMF and the World Bank last year, following the significant gains that were made on the economic management, projected that Ghana's inflation is supposed to drop to 8 plus or minus 2 this year. So it is a target that is achievable. It's a target that is coming from the foundations that have been laid. And so the finance minister should be able to acknowledge this. You can't wash away the significant strides that the Akufo-Addo government made. And that's what we are seeing, the science we are seeing today. You are inheriting an economy that is worth 1.2 trillion. 1.2 trillion. That is the economy that President Akufo-Addo and the NPP have left for President Mahama. When he was leaving, he left Ghana 219 billion. Akufo-Addo has increased that. If your father inherited your grandfather and was able to grow the size and the wealth of the family from 219 billion to 1.2 trillion, you don't just be ungrateful to that your father. He has to be grateful. The finance minister must acknowledge and say, I am grateful to the NPP. I am grateful to President Akufo-Addo for leaving me such a wealth, 1.2 trillion in terms of our nominal GDP.
Thank you very much, and we'll continue to speak. And so that's a former advisor, economic advisor to the Vice President, as we continue to ready ourselves really with respect to what it is to expect later today. I can see a number of members of Parliament already who've made their way into the chamber. We'll bring the conversations in relation to pre-thoughts here, but we will continue to monitor proceedings from here in Parliament for you as we ready ourselves for the presentation by the Finance Minister. Mawina Igbeta and the rest of my colleagues, back to you in the studio, and we'll be back shortly with a bit more in terms of reactions.
Well, so Mawina Igbeta gave us an update, speaking to a number of individuals, including the Tana North Member of Parliament who used to speak for the Vice President or the former Vice President of the Republic, who also at the time chaired government's economic management team, and that the Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo-led government, Dr. Gideon Buakwe, a number of individuals also spoken to. But that's what we're going to do right here in the studio. And I have your Michael. Michael, what's up? You're just behind all. That's what we do as always, live, bringing all the relevant information, etc. And what will you be doing quickly?
So we'll be walking you through a number of indicators. For instance, the 120-day action plan the NPP, NDC government had ahead of their swearing in, what they hope to achieve within the 120-day period. We'll be walking through the numbers and see what has been done, what is left, what more is there to look out for. And of course, this would also influence what we should expect in the budget, because a number of highlights were indicated there. For instance, that some taxes will be scrapped within the first 90 days of the policy. Those are basically a few other things that we'll be talking about.
Well, certainly. So make sure you stick and stay, because also we've been sandwiched by some great people, not only from academia, industry, but also making sure they do the advocacy, representing various sectors of Ghana or Ghana's economy. So I have Mark Bedu Abwaje. He is currently for the Ghana Chamber, with the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Chief Executive. So good morning to you, and thank you for joining us.
Ghana's problem in a snapshot. This is the deficit number of 42.52 billion cedis. Deficit means we're spending far more than we're earning. It's a simple problem, right? If you live in a household and you keep spending more than you earn, you know you're in trouble. That is Ghana's problem in a nutshell. And it is 42.52 billion cedis worth. So somehow we need to bridge this particular gap. We need to hear from Case Letter Forson today how he plans to bridge this gap. And from everything that we've heard, from the intelligence we've gathered, this is primarily his focus in the budget. He's going to be cutting a bit, but he's also going to be, as we will illustrate pretty shortly, also cutting some of the revenue handles, but cutting elsewhere to make up for it. By the end of the day, we need to see how everything else adds up to reducing this particular number. Now, this really...
Before I take you to the next slide, I'll take you to Parliament, because let's go to Parliament, where Judge Biafe is on standby with Gideon Buakwe.
Will come in. What are you? Thank you so much for joining us for our coverage of the presentation of the 2025 budget. I have with me Honorable Gideon Buakwe. He's a member of Parliament, and he's joining me here for our coverage of the budget. Honorable, thank you so much for your time. Let me first ask you, what are your expectations for this budget that will be presented very soon? All other things being equal, 10, 11, or 12?
Well, I think my expectations are just the expectation of every Ghanaian. The finance minister is supposed to present the budget, and the budget basically is doing two things: telling us how the government intends to raise revenue, and then how he's going to spend the revenue and the projects that those revenues are going to execute. Every Ghanaian wants the best. Much as we want the best, we also think there's a responsibility that must be executed on the government side, on the citizenry side. Politics causes governments to say all kinds of things, but when they come to power, we expect them to walk the talk. There are a lot of things that the government has floated around. We expect government to be very candid to the Ghanaian people, present the situations that it is, but as he's doing that, he has to stay true to the data. And so I expect the finance minister to present data that is accurate and verifiable. Verifiable in the sense that sometimes the tendencies are there that the government may want in an attempt to, put the previous government in a bad light, say things that in the end may not even help the image of the country. Today, every Ghanaian is expecting the e-levy to be scrapped. You want it to go? Oh, why not? I mean, we had stated that we're going to scrap it. The vice president, then candidate for the New Patriotic Party, had indicated that whatever purpose the e-levy came to serve, he thought it was time that we needed to do away with it to free our space. We expect the betting tax to go. I expect the COVID-19 levy to go, the emissions levy to go. But it is important that once we expect these to go, the finance minister, in exercising that responsibility to scrap them, should be able to give us what the alternative is in terms of the revenue shortfalls that may come as a result of that. You cannot tell us that you want to scrap one task and come with another task and even more, impactful in terms of
what you are picking up. There have been some reports about
that is exactly what is going to happen, because
what are they taking away and what are they bringing?
If you read the NDC manifesto and also you listen to the president himself, the finance minister, and those in government today, they have not produced a single alternative in terms of measures to mitigate the revenue shortfalls. All that we are hearing is an indication that they may introduce other taxes.
About rationalizing the VAT and the tax structure to make up.
The devil is in the details. Yes, you can talk about compliance, you can talk about rationalizing government expenditure, but we need to see the numbers. These taxes that you are scrapping, what are the revenue impacts that they're going to have on the national, coffers? If we know that the impact is S amount of cedis, then the rationalization you're talking about, how much is that also bringing? A lot of the time, politicians, they will use words and terminologies to describe things, but in effect, you wouldn't see much being cut. So it is important for the finance minister to give us the numbers that are scrapped e-levy. The fiscal impact was less than 5 billion. I scrapped, betting tax. The fiscal impact is 3 billion. Add everything together. The total fiscal impact of all these taxes that I scrapped is this. This is the hole that have been plugged. Now I'm going to do S, Y, Z to fill in that. We don't want an additional task. If you scrap one task and you bring additional task, that's like you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. That doesn't make sense. I don't think that is what Ghanaians want to see. But unfortunately, that is exactly what the finance minister is going to do. He's going to introduce new taxes. He's going to, some taxes that were scrapped by the previous government, he's going to bring them back. He's going to increase VAT that are already charged on some other goods and services. For me, if you do that, you're worsening the plight of the Ghanaian people where you haven't helped them. But unfortunately, that is exactly what he's going to do.
Honorable, I appreciate your time so much. And this is our coverage of the 2025 budget here in Parliament. That is a Joy News coverage here. But I will not be going to the studio. I'll be going to Kweku Santi Ifi over there. I know you have some bigwigs who are VIP guests here to get your thoughts on the expectation of the budget for this year. Kweku, take it over.
A lot of very important guests that I will be looking forward to speaking to the National Communications Officer of the NDC, but now the acting CEO of PMMC, which will very shortly become the gold board. And let me speak to him pretty shortly. Mr. Sammy Jeffy is here, and I'll get to him to take his view on the upcoming budget, but also the PMMC legislation that have been going around. He's been doing a lot of stakeholder consultation. When exactly is it coming to Parliament? Let me take that first. Honorable Sammy Jeffy, live on Joy News. What exactly is the gold board bill coming in? The timelines you set for yourself, you've been going around doing consultation. When exactly is that coming to Parliament?
Well, we have concluded processes for the drafting of the bill, and we presented that to the Minister for Finance. It has gone to the Attorney General and Minister for Justice for formal drafting. It's come back to the Ministry of Finance. It's gone to Cabinet. It's been approved by Cabinet, and in the next couple of days, I believe that the Minister for Finance will be laying the bill before Parliament. Even today, in this budget that we are all waiting for, I believe that a lot of light will be thrown on the gold board, and the Minister will make his plans about the gold board known to the people of this country in this budget. But beyond the gold board, the general expectations of all of us as Ghanaians, the social contract that we in the NDC signed with the people of Ghana on the 7th of December 2024. I'm confident that today Ghanaians will come to the realization that all politicians are not the same. There are those who flatter to deceive just for purposes of power. There are those who lie their way to office with no respect for their social contract with the people. But there are politicians of integrity, like His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the man we all follow, the man we all serve, who have respect and regard for their social contract with the people. And right from this budget, you're going to see a government that keeps faith with this social contract with the people. You're going to see the Ministry of Finance announce a lot of policies in fulfillment to promises we made in our 120-day social contract and in the main manifesto for the 2024 elections. And you're going to see policies that will ease hardships, because I think that is what we are all looking for. The suffering is too much. But look, the message I have for the people of this country is weep no more. Hope has come. Abayin Papaba. This is the change we voted for. And today, we shall hope again. We shall believe politicians again.
MP for Tanano, the deputy ranking on the finance committee, who just says that what you are going to do in this budget is to rob Peter to people, take with the right hand and give with the left hand and take with the right hand. He says, while you are promising to cut some taxes, you are going to introduce a number of them again.
Well, let's just wait for the next 2 hours and let's see. But I can tell you that this budget will not be introducing any draconian taxes like they did when they were in government on the Ghanaian people. This budget is clearly a budget of hope. It is a budget that will be easing hardships and not imposing hardships. It's a budget that will be creating jobs and not collapsing jobs like they did. And we don't have to speculate at all, because in the next 2 hours, 3 hours maximum, we will know what is in the budget. But I can tell you that the difference between the NDC and the MPP will be manifestly clear by the time we are all done listening to this budget, because you are going to see a political party, the National Democratic Congress, that respects its vows, its promises, and its social contracts with the people of this country. A government that sincerely cares, a government that is committed to resetting our country by embarking on the necessary structural and financial reforms that will open up Ghana for business, that will support young people, irrespective of their political or social backgrounds, to realize their dreams and their aspirations. That is a budget I'm looking forward to. And I have doubt in my mind that Honorable Casey Latufos, my good brother, would deliver.
The last question I want to ask you is, Galamsey, are we going to see revenue measures or allocations to the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry and other places? And Gold Board, its success will partly depend on how Galamsey is managed. For instance, in the last few days, pictures of you in 2021 going to some of the polluted bodies have circulated and they've said that this government, despite the rhetoric in opposition, haven't shown the same commitment while in office. Of course, it's just been 50 days plus, and Erastus has reported just last few days of how government has moved into a certain forest reserve and moved the illegal miners off there. But there are those who still insist that the commitment hasn't been there. What is this government going to say in this budget in terms of resourcing all those institutions that have to fight galamsey to really be able to deal with this menace?
You see, the fight against illegal mining is a topmost priority for the Mahama government. And so you're going to see that even in the allocations that are made for the relevant agencies entrusted with that fight. But you see, fighting illegal mining goes beyond budgetary allocations. What you need, and in fact that is what has been missing in the last 8 years, is the political will to deal with those who engage in illegal mining, to serve as a deterrent to others. That is what we are seeing under this current NDC Mahama government. It's not about what the MPP says, it's about what the facts say. Any objective person should just go to the Facebook wall of Erastus Asaridonko. I was on his wall, Facebook wall, and I've shared a couple of them because I was impressed. Anytime Erastus comes out to sound an alarm or to raise a concern that there is illegal mining ongoing in one forest reserve or the other, Erastus comes back a day or two after to report that it's been dealt with. The perpetrators have been arrested, the excavators have been seized, and the forest reserves secured. And you can go and check. And as we speak, over 10 forest reserves have already been secured. These were safe havens for MPP galamsey kingpins. Today, they are no longer safe havens. For them, they are no-go areas. And it is so refreshing to see that even before that LI is repealed, the LI that gives the president the power to grant mining concessions to people in forest reserves, even before the repeal of that law, you are seeing the government take the necessary, the decisive, actions that we've all called for. As someone who led the war against illegal mining for the NDC in opposition and always called the MPP out for their so-called fight against illegal mining, which from all intents and purposes was a charade, I am very impressed with the significant strides made in the galamsey fight so far. But that is not to say that we've succeeded. No, there is still room for improvement. We still have a long way to go. But you see, where there is a will, there is always a way. The political will is manifestly evident. And that is all we need to win this fight. And inshallah, like the Muslims say, we shall win this fight.
Thank you very much. That is Sami Jemfi, the acting head of PMMC, who's been giving us some indication as what exactly they are doing with the gold board. He says in the next few days, they would expect that the gold board bill will come to Parliament. It's gone to the Attorney General, it's gone to Cabinet. All those works have been done on it, and pretty shortly, they expect that will come. It's a central plank in the NDC's quest to make Ghana more self-reliant, to get more revenue, to be able to do a lot of things. And I've also asked him questions about illegal mining. He's answered in terms of what he believes the current administration of John Dramani Mahama is doing vis-a-vis what they inherited from the New Patriotic Party. He believes there is still a lot of room for improvement. There's still a lot of things that can be done by the NDC government to get to the point where Ghanaian people can truly see that they've won the fight. Yesterday on PM Express, Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed did indicate, he told Joy News, that the plan is to actually repeal that LI, and the processes are far advanced. LI 2462 that allows mining in forest reserves. There are so many companies, so many private entities that have taken licenses from government to mine in forest reserves. All that is going to be done. As I speak to you, the chamber is filling up. A number of NDC and MPP MPs are now.
Well, back into the studio here away from Parliament, which we shall take you back shortly, is my colleague Kuku Asante interacting with Sami Jemfi, who is purporting to say that this budget shall be eventually bringing hope to the Ghanaian people. But back into the studio, hand over to Evans, who was just on the smart wall and putting this whole budget presentation into better perspective.
Yes, we're just talking about the biggest problem that the finance minister will have to solve with this particular budget, which was the the budget deficit that we've had. We're spending far more than we're earning. And it's refreshing to hear from Sammy Jemfi that he is expecting that some monies to be allocated to his department and to his agency and to the relevant ministries to fight Galamsey. When you are allocating those resources, the finance minister will have to do that, mindful that it needs to bridge this particular gap that you have there. You talk about the revenues currently underperforming compared to your expenditure. 877 billion is what we raised. If you look at the 2024 figure, but we spent 219 billion. That clearly is something you need to juggle. And from what I understand, they have found ingenious ways of doing this. And the intelligence that we have in speaking to those who understand what is going to happen, we've heard Gideon Barco make the point that there are going to be several tax handles introduced and they're going to introduce new ones. It's my understanding that that isn't going to be the case. They will find other ways of raising the revenue, but also find ingenious ways of taking monies from places such as what I heard yesterday, a particular pool of funds called the tax refund account, which has accrued a lot of monies there that can be used to sort of, plug some of the holes that they're going to be having when they cut some of the key tax handles they promised they will cut. So they're going to keep the promises to us. The promises they make to cut some of the tax handles, like the Burton tax, will go, the e-levy will indeed go, and then they need to show us how you're plugging that hole. And that's where they've been telling us that they have some ingenious. We'll wait to see what that is. But that will define Tvucc's budget.
Right.
This ability to rein in expenditure, cut a bit more, but also be fiscally very disciplined is what people close to him and those watching are calling autonomics. And we're waiting to see what that really is when we hear it today, because he needs to do quite a bit because of where we are. Now, so talking about where we are, one of the biggest things we have to deal with the compensation for workers. It's always been a big challenge because of how significant a burden it is on the national budget. The last time we checked, and in terms of the projection, this year is going to be the highest yet when it comes to what we're spending on workers. 73 billion, so we're going to be spending on workers.
Is this inclusive of the 10% increase so far?
So that's a projection, exactly, yes. Okay. So that's what was projected. It includes that. Compared to 63, it's $10 billion jump from last year alone. And this year, the burden on the economy, on the national purse, is even more when you begin to compare and bring in the debt that is now due, that you have to pay, that was rescheduled, now coming into play now. And then you have to deal with an increasing wage bill, right? Yep. So again, it is a pretty difficult task that this government will have to juggle in this particular budget. And look at the percentage increase that we are talking about over the period when it comes to police compensation, some 13.2% jump from the 20 in terms of the projections going forward. And this is the period, remember, that they will be in power. But here is where we're focusing on the 2025 budget. 14.8% jump is what you're having to deal with. And then you have the story of these two-pronged challenge that you have to face, the compensation. And you see the challenge there with the revenue spent on compensation, the percentage of revenue. So you're not raising enough, but you're spending 35% of the revenues that you're making just on compensation. You are left with very little for everything else, including paying your debt, right? And so that's another key thing that you'll have to deal with this year in the budget. So I'm really looking forward to this year in terms of how they sort of address this. One of the other areas that I want to focus on, if this screen will respond.
Whilst you're at your screen, maybe I'll go to...
Is the debt issue. Okay. And I'll come to that pretty shortly. And I know Kojo is looking at his own ways of trying to figure out how they maneuver around this particular challenge.
But your wall is just back. Shall I go to Kojo?
Yes, but I would like to just take on that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good that we've arrived at debt. Okay, because it's a huge cost item on the government's bill. And look, Evan started with the big number, right? Our deficit, the difference between how much we will make and how much we need to spend. Okay, now look, on our debt, servicing alone will cost us 216 million Ghana cedis.
So let's put that in context so that we can now come to the debt question that Kojo is going to, because it's a very important point. If you look at the debt servicing obligation, if you look at the period of 2025 to 2028, and this is really the beginning of what this government will have to deal with. So we're going to be heralding, for example, in the next, 4 years, what the debt service obligation is, and we need to see the first ideas in the budget of how to deal with it. But talk about this number, 709 billion over that period, right? 2025, 2028. So that's a huge responsibility on the shoulder. And you have to start this year by trying to deal with this. And because if you look at the breakdown and the areas that need to deal with, it's quite significant. If you look at 2025, and this is the 2025 figure, 142 billion is what they will need to find and pay and set to service the debt. That is significant. And remember, you are looking at it in the context of the compensation. So you're going to do this and then also fix your issue with compensation. You have to do both at the same time because we can't afford any longer to default.
Well, just hang in there. We'll take you back to Parliament where Judge Weafi is on standby with the former Deputy Finance Minister, Abena Osei Asare. Judge.
Ghana cedis, okay? That's a lot of money, right? Now, that's just one of the items we're going to have to spend money on this year. Last year, we spent we're expecting to spend about 73 billion on the wage bill, you've heard from Evans. Last year, we spent 17 billion on health, 32.7 billion on education. On agriculture, we spent some 3.3 billion, and we're going to be spending more this year. So, and when you look at the items that we have to spend money on, it's far above the 318 billion Ghana cedis revenue we are expecting for 2025.
I mean, what kind of magic can we do, which is what the finance minister is about to present to us? But I'll take you back to Parliament. You see members of Parliament tuning in so that the presentation will start. But my colleague George Weafi is on standby and having a conversation with Abena Osei Asare.
Should say, but let me also say that the mandate of the PAC is spelled out in the standing order. So clearly, you have our mandate spelled out for us, and we hope that we can come up with other innovative measures to make sure we do our work and discharge our mandates successfully. So that is what I want to say.
The challenge has always been, Madam, about making sure that we recover what has been lost, and even some look at your powers as well. What are you going to do to address that challenge that is not just about the public query, but also ensuring that whatever that has been misapplied, whatever has been lost, can be gotten back for the state?
Clearly, we will go according to the law because we are governed by laws in this country. And so, where people need to be surcharged for the findings of the Auditor General, once we bring the report to the plenary accepts our recommendations, we'll go ahead and make sure we do the needful. But clearly, we'll be guided by the law, and that will help us achieve the aim or the purpose of making our public financial space robust and efficient.
Being guided by the law, are you going to ensure that we recover some of these funds?
Certainly, what we do is right after we present our reports, it has to come to the plenary. The plenary will have to adopt the recommendations. So once they adopt the recommendations, where we ought to surcharge people, and the plenary accepts it, that we will go ahead and make sure and we recover everything that is due the nation per the law.
Let's come to this budget and your expectations. We've heard a lot of things. Some will say that you are in a privileged position, being there, you know what goes on right now. What are your expectations for this budget?
Thank you very much. One, I'm happy that the Ghana Statistical Service confirmed the GDP growth rate yesterday as 5.7%. and the strength of our GDP is about 1.2 trillion, clearly tells you that the economy is on the path of recovery. And so what I want to do, what I want to see is a budget that will sustain that recovery. In sustaining that recovery, I also want to see the budget generating enough revenue for the discharge of our expenditures. Also, I want to see a fully funded free SHS, because we need to build our human capital. We may not see all a taste of the investments now, but clearly in some time to come we will benefit from this kind of investments that we are putting into our human capital. Also, I want to see some program as to how we are going to complete the unfinished Agenda 111 projects. Clearly, I don't want to see all done in a year, because that is not possible. But yes, in the lifetime of the presidents, in these 4 years, I want to see a program addressing how we are going to complete this. Also, I want to see some level of good funding for the road structure, for the road sector. This is because if we do not do that and we leave all the roads that we have already begun for some time and then we go back, it becomes more expensive. So I want to see some level of appreciable level of funding, in addition to bringing back the road toll, to see some appreciable level of funding on in the road sector. And finally, I also want to see that the NDC stay true to Ghanaians and remove the taxes they promised Ghanaians they were going to remove, but at the same time utilizing what we have efficiently, so that at least one, it can bring back the confidence and sustain the economy to a path of full recovery.
Finally, before I let you go, one thing I just want to pick your thoughts on is the taxes. What have you heard on the taxes thing, and what is the minister going to do when it comes to revenue and taxes?
I remember so well, and I have read so well in their manifesto what's the kind of taxes they told Ghanaians they were going to remove, and the COVID-19 levy, the sanitation levy, the e-levy as well. And so I expect that they stay true to Ghanaians. But one thing I would advise is that in filling up that gap, you don't necessarily have to come up with new taxes. But what you have to do, we had this medium-term revenue strategy where we said we were going to bring on board the informal sector, because the NIA card registration has exposed us to quite a number of people who are not on the tax net. So you don't have to necessarily increase or come up with new taxes. But what you have to do, find...
Back in the studio, Evans is still by the smart wall and will give more explanation of this debt servicing obligation that we have as a country.
Yeah, and Kojo was talking about it, and I just wanted to emphasize with the actual numbers. And that really is where the biggest challenge is.
They would start announcing some of those initial policies. But as you understand, we have a 4-year horizon. Therefore, not everything can be done in the very first budget. Subsequent budget will continue resolving the issues as well.
In the immediacy, we know there are mentions of major tax cuts as well as cuts in expenditure as well. What is that one tangible that Ghanaians can really look forward to after today's delivery by the finance minister? Is it to say that after today, comparing to Akufo-Addo in his first year, he ambitiously launched the free SHS policy? Could we be hearing the finance minister fully launch either the 24-hour economic policy or the free tertiary education for level 100 students?
I prefer not to go ahead of the finance minister. As you understand, I need to allow him that privilege of bringing, shall I call it, the set of policies that we hope to announce. But the most important thing to remember at all moments is this: governance is not just about hype. It's not simply about the kind of things you do so you can get an applause. It's what you do that would bring about sustainable development of your country, and I'm sure we'll be seeing the beginning of that. Policies that would start anchoring us, bringing us back into a place of stability, in order to allow that over the next 4 years we can develop this country in a way that Ghanaians will know clearly that there is a much better government in place.
Thank you very much. That's the Honourable Fifi Avikwete speaking to us just a short while ago, and we got the indication that a lot more a lot more with respect to expectation will come forward. But we're still gearing up quickly in relation to what it is that we'll hear today from the finance minister here in Parliament. Let's speak to the member of Parliament for Evaluate Jomro Jura right now. Honourable, thank you, a member of the Energy Committee as well. What can we expect today when the minister speaks? Maybe you're a member of the Energy Committee as well. There's been a lot of talk about privatizing ECG. We know that the National Economic Dialogue, the subcommittees suggested privatization of quite a number of key energy assets. Where do you stand on this? What can we expect from the finance minister today as well?
Thank you, my brother, and it's good to see you. I believe when the outgoing president said that they had left the lights on, Ghanaians were wondering how the lights were left on. Now, how do you leave light on when you leave a debt of $3 billion? You understand it? This is just like firefighting. Where there's fire, you quench. As you speak now, the IPPs are being paid, are owed about $1.2 billion. You understand? And also ECG is a problem because ECG that is supposed to use the catch water mechanism to ensure that all the sectors along the chain get what they need to keep the power on is a problem. So by privatizing, we ensure that the collections in terms of revenue can be increased so that it reflects all the way to the generation bit. So I believe that and also with renewable energy, they can be matched up because of the cost of electricity. As we speak now, it's so expensive. Ghana happens to be one of the most expensive places where power generation, the end user pays so much for it. So I believe that there'll be ways to manage it, especially where the ASLA money that was gotten was about, by the last government, was about 45 billion. And how can you have 45 billion Ghana cedis when there's a debt of about 75 billion? So I believe that there will be ways to cut, and especially when renewable energy is being added to it. And that would be a good thing. Sure. And so that is the hope, that there will be ways, after the cuts, to ensure that electricity, for example, becomes affordable for the end consumer.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for speaking to us. I've just seen the finance minister as well make his way into Parliament. But let's speak to the Honorable Sticker as well, the member of Parliament for Inchaiso as well.
With the taking out of these taxes. On the expenditure side, we know that the finance minister and the government as a whole has been indicating the need to cut down. Government has assumed leadership with regards to the number of ministers appointed and all that. But one thing that we are quite curious is that in this whole framework, government is a major factor in how the economy performs. So when you look at aggregate demand in the economy, you are looking at consumption of households, you are looking at investments, and then you are looking at government expenditure.
Right.
The G in a developing country context is critical and is huge. Government expenditure serves as can be used as a stimulant for other sectors. So, for example, government can demand a lot of food, rice, staple products from farms to serve as an incentive for people to move there because it increases profitability. So when government focuses a lot on cutting back on a lot of the expenditure, we are curious to see the areas where government is cutting. Because if the cut continues, you see that the economy may not necessarily grow as we expect it, because government is a major demand within this equation. And so for me, I'm looking at creative the finance minister is coming out with, channeling government expenditure, particularly to stimulate growth in specific areas, productive aspects, while reducing waste in other areas.
Well done.
There is also another area we need to look critically at, because government budget is not too flexible as it stands. So you look at compensation to employees, that is not something government can easily cut. There are earmarked funds that have to go to district assemblies, specific funds that have to go to specific institutions. Those are also stipulated by law, and those are not funds that you can easily cut.
Right.
And so in terms of interest payments, we know that we've had some leeway because of the debt restructuring and all of that. And as Evans was indicating, these are issues that would also be coming up. And so it is quite an interesting time, and we want to see what the minister has to present this morning to know the direction of policy. But particularly for me, I want to see that government is walking the talk by focusing on employment generation. That is also an issue, because if you want to generate employment and you are cutting expenditure to critical areas, that cannot be done. And so in that context, how much expenditure is government planning to pump into agricultural sector, for example? What is government doing in terms of the whole agri value chain, value addition in the local economy? We need to see a number of these, and it's not necessarily about cutting is great. Cutting wasteful expenditure, particularly in government machinery, is exciting, but we need to be careful not to be, the economy is recovering and not, change the direction.
If there's any language that the whole of Ghana will understand today, will be the tax component that this government promised that we're going to be scrapping, or better still, rationalize. Now, the IEA believes that for the better tax, really, it shouldn't be scrapped entirely. At least it should be reduced. In all of this tax pool, which one do you think the government should really rethink, not because it's a campaign promise, but really the economy will need? Are you for what the IEA says, or you're for a different opinion?
Indeed, when you look at government financing, you see that one of the major tax handles that is leaving, which is critical, is the COVID levy. But I know that there's a lot of consensus in the air that it has to go. COVID no longer exists. But for me, I'm looking at, is there a way that they can rebrand, channel it into a critical area, but a tax that I would stand by and say that if it is maintained, it's okay, it's a betting tax. We know that taxation is not just about revenue mobilization, but it's also a way of modeling behavior. All over the world, there are taxes, same taxes all over, taxes on cigarette, taxes on alcohol. And indeed, when you look at the betting tax, it is also a form of a direct tax, because it's a tax on income.
Right.
So people are earning income through betting. Why are they not willing to pay taxes on it? And indeed, when
stay with me, and then I'll just take viewers back to Parliament, where my colleague Judge is on standby, speaking to the Lands and Natural Resources Minister Emmanuel Kofi-Boah.
What should we be expecting in terms of the expected reforms in that particular space?
Well, this budget is very, very clear. We've said it clearly that there are going to be clear policies on mining. We are going to reform how we mine, making sure that we bring new areas of mining. For example, when we talk about small scale, what about medium scale? We're going to introduce medium scale mining to make sure we will navigate people and build capacity there. We are going to organize them better in mining cooperatives and ensure that everybody is playing by the rules. They are organized, they are following the rules, and then we are empowering people at the district level when it comes to even licensing region. But more importantly, we're going to draw the red line.
In 30 seconds,
yes,
say it's still an issue.
It is that all of us as Ghanaians must win together. We can do mining legally without destroying our water bodies and our forest reserves and protecting our environments. And this budget is going to tell the people of Ghana that we have a stake, all of us, to fight this together.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel Makofibua, Minister of Land and Natural Resources, and this is our continuous coverage of the 2024 budget. As I told you earlier on, we'll still be catching up with some of the ministers of state, members of the minority and the majority as well, on what they are expecting of this budget and also what they also have with me here, the Energy Minister as well. Energy Minister, thank you so much for your time. Just a quick word on the expectation of this budget, Honorable.
Thank you very much. I think that from the energy perspective, how we can deal with the 80 billion CD liability currently impacting the energy sector. As we speak today, WAPCO has curtailed gas supply to 60 mm/scarf because of our outstanding liability. How we can deal with some of these issues, and more importantly, how to reduce the mountain debt stock and ultimately reverse the trend and turn the sector around. Already the minister has given cabinet a briefing, and I'm very, very impressed with that. So I can say for certain that this budget is a budget that will resolve some of the problems we are engaged currently, some of the challenges confronting us, and I have every confidence that the Honorable Tvucc will deliver.
Honorable, the surety we are gathering from you today is that we are not having any problem with supply issue that is resolving in some, call it doomsday or call it whatever name you want to call it, that are still fueling people pushing for some timetable, Honorable.
No, this is the supply situation today. As you can see, supply outlook March 11. Demand and everything, and you can see it. No load management will be required during the period. See, this is the official report I get on a daily basis, and so we are not shedding load. There is no load shedding, and so you cannot publish a load shedding timetable when you are not shedding load. Admittedly, we've inherited a very weak system. The transmission grid is very, very weak, and so the least opportunity, you see some areas going up, which means that we need to strengthen the grid. We need to improve the primary substations, inject more substations, especially around the Kumasi enclave and Ashanti region enclave. And that is what we are doing. This week I'm visiting the Ashanti region to inspect for myself work currently ongoing. And so I appeal to Ghanaians to bear with us. It's a very tight, difficult situation we've inherited. We require a bit of time to be able to resolve it. But let me state that as we speak, we have enough generation to meet the demand situation. So there will be no need to do a load shedding timetable when you are not shedding load. But some areas have serious challenges that we've inherited. And it's been so for more than a year now. We are not going to tell you to go and publish your own timetable. You recall the challenges we've always had last year. We've inherited a very weak system and a hugely indebted system. IPPs are threatening to cut power supply. WAPCO is already reduced gas supply. ENI, Nigeria Gas also threatened. We had to pay some $35 million recently in order to hold the system. And so we are determined to do whatever it takes to hold the electricity system. The challenge with the electricity system, unlike other areas, when the lights go off, everybody complains. And so you have to do everything you can to hold the system. It's tough, it's difficult, but we are determined.
Finally, the Honorable Minister in the Twitter engagement talked about the fact that there will be some review of the ESLA and all the rest. I mean, you made some recommendations to him on dealing with the ESLA situation when it comes to these taxes?
Yes. We've made some recommendations. We've even asked that they should consolidate most of the taxes so that we know exactly how much comes and how much to deal with it. And he's agreed and he's done that. At the cabinet briefing, he made it clear that he had consolidated them and would channel them into the energy sector.
Finally, on the second gas plan, how far have we gone since you talked about the September shutdown and the implications for the power supply? Are we moving fast or
very fast? Very, very fast. There's also another option on the table. GENSA has approached us. I think they've commenced the construction of one gas processing plant. We are all Ghanaians. If there's a better option there, we'll look at it. What we want is to have solutions. And that's exactly what we are looking for.
Thank you, Honorable Fred. And I'll come back to you after the presentation.
Thank you.
And this is our coverage of the 2024 budget. I have an honorable with me here as well to get your thoughts on your thoughts about the budget. What are your expectations in terms of the budget presentation, Honorable? And someone say, being in a privileged position as a former deputy minister, you know what goes on right now in the engine room and the preparation and the presentation.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. In the first place, I wish Dr. Tvucc very well. He's been my friend, and I think in terms of competence, you won't doubt that. But what we are expecting from them first is to present the true state of the economy, because we think His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has been presenting something contrary to what we left over for them, so that Ghanaians will have the true picture to make their decisions, especially in the investment field. Because just Statistical Service about a couple of days came out with the fact that we are growing about 5.7%, almost twice 2016. So it's not that bad that they are painting, and they should ensure continuity, because governance is continuity. Development is a process too. They should manage the fiscal space well, and that should be demonstrated by the budget. How they are going to manage their spending, how they are going to manage the projects and the programs that they have, and then how they are going to finance the financing options. Is it debt financing predominantly, or revenue that they will generate? That will mean that their decisions and policies with respect to how they are going to manage tax policies, with respect to how they are going to manage tax policies, should be taken into consideration. Is it that they promise Ghanaians and they are going to stick to whether it will help Ghana or not, or they are going to have fair analysis of our fiscal space and out of that make the right decision? Because tax management is calibrated in nature.
You talked about tax, and I want to pick your final thought before we quickly go into the chamber to pick the feed as well. Some would say that for you, in terms of the tax situation, what are your proposals in trying to deal with the tax situation? Because government is faced with an option of removing these taxes. There will be a huge hole. How does he feel about it?
My position on taxes has never changed. I've been very consistent. One, broaden the base. Broaden the base. How do you go about? A lot of artisans are not paying taxes. We should begin to collect their data and run the data saying that we have opportunity to tax them. Two, leakages. Too much. It doesn't matter who is in government. We need to make sure that all these leakages are dealt with. Three, which is where the problem is. And I said tax management is calibrated. They should always introduce new taxes, increase tax items, or withdraw taxes or reduce tax items based on the prevailing status of the fiscal space. God, that should influence you, or that should inform your decision making whether to increase taxes or not. So I'm advising them that they know the current fiscal state of the economy. If they think the fiscal space is said that in terms of obligations we have enough money, in terms of tax we are collecting we have enough money, and our debt to GDP has gotten to where we are okay, then they can take away taxes. But if not, they should be careful how they will manage our tax policies with respect to our fiscal space. Because if you don't create the needed equilibrium and harmonize the relationships of the fiscal space elements, you will destroy your country. So that is my position on that.
Thank you, Honorable. And this is our coverage of the 2025 budget. And Mamiesi, I understand, is also picking up from live from Abosoka in terms of gauging the expectations of businesses on this budget. Over to you, Mamiesi, live from Abosoka.
Now is bustling over here. The marketers are ready for the presentation of the budget by the finance minister in parliament, and the people are ready to have their voices heard. I'm here to solicit their views on what to expect in the budget coming up in just a few minutes by the finance minister. So I'm here with Ojas and some other traders here at Abosoka Market. Ojas, good morning. How is it going?
Good morning, fine, thank you.
I'm also here. Daddy, what's your name? And then we also have here
Edda.
So all these men here are ready, and they are here to tell us their views about the budget that is about to be read in a few minutes. Ojas, what are your expectations in this morning's budget?
Okay, good morning. Mechia Joy.
ahwefo na tiefo nyina ye frame ojas na me waboso kan ha me expectation na me hwese finance minister e de beba beto Ghana man nyina ni mama e ho atoye ne se government yewura mahama ye campaign wa hye bo bebre se obey taxes bi afi ho te se covid tax na yi levy no enti na me expectation ne se omumra me kasa na omutwitwa sa taxes ni nyina mu na emom no me srepi se ma ometwa tax ni mu pat o twa tax na onkofa tax bi emfa mehye mu esa na akoye te se de wa robo Peter e de ko pay Paul no ti me srepi na me wa boso kan ye de another expectation I expect finance minister and this ya ban o ma ba power sisi ya ne se port ho no ye breye taxes bebre ho a ye wura hye ye bo so ba at least obeyi be 5 to 10 taxes bi afri ho ama ye ho atoyen and now ko fa ne man ba bo so kan every day in day out ye to ne emamu
wo dia ne set taxes no omonyi free ne amana mo koyi
na se oyi a me another expectation is anyesi oyi COVID-19 tax na wafa kwati kwan bi asan ko fa tax bi e dia abehye mu eno de ma nya na sa kwasi ko na ogina kwanki ana te se ne tie na enti oyi tax ni fiswa na wa yi kura asan ne ye ho beto yen ne ye nso ye betumi ate ne maso na consumers ne beto a na omo so ho atom na oman no afa ne ntuma pafra.
So you heard there from Ojas, he is also wanting that those taxes, COVID-19 tax, the e-levy be scrapped off, and certain taxes that are being charged at the port should also be scrapped off. Let me also hear from that daddy. Now also how ne say minjina monchen ha kakra na menu ni nkomo kakra ansa na ene budget na ebe koso no Majumem to say no, say no, because Naman Bois says a partner costro, it's a Naman to say no.
No, so your family, Uncle Jimmy. Now, maybe the Minimpan said, first I'm about Bosaka, and Nipa and also, Ewaha. It's not a name of a baby, and about the concert here, Yano. Say, so, Nipa Dawson, Pansy, and Yama, say, be a Nipa better at all, say Nipa bro, 1 million and a ton. Enti media minim say nya de a ye beje bibia fofofo e wa brabom sese biem sese ye ko yenim na me de ani shaban e ba no na da na me so mo de da ya kire say bibia ni ba betimi a kire say obetima sesa ne mama ya ko yenim da
ya ki said omo be mu nche sese omo ye no ka say be 2 months kra ana omo di wa be mo no mo kire say omo be ye ne mama mu man emu ada ha ma mo
no, me the enter make us answer. We be able to get any no. Any part of yes or buy and say any that. Kasa tell my MPP was no lot of balance say oh lot of there's some a lot of aba.
MPP free money na na ko ye ma ode.
Enko yie. Ana on ba so enko yie. E dey enter make us say na dey obi abetima be san man no. E dey na da no aya no mo ba mo dey da say ye ba ye be we no. Ya o mu ntwa so. Say say na o man mu no. Bibia no e kire say ye betima ko ye tibie mu. Ye ko anim. Gamba na say ye patro. Baby e beduru. Ye na we pesa do ba fo no be ka so moto no no frame kan to ko be si Ghana no.
No mom no. We ho den. And this number.
Oh, but
finance minister so yes. Niama be Google akwem. Unti no say no.
Yeah, bompa yes sir. Niama o de be ba no. Emu o man no. Bibi o de be bia na bo o man no. O man me mitimi bi. Enti pa ya bo say niama o be ka no me da yen. Adada ene de abufuo ba. Enti so ka say e bia aboso kan munu bu container ba 40 feet. E be jibu 20 million. Ni abo en say man na duru na di 30 a. Asamba to no. Enti on ka de e be bo yen. Yes ye ni.
Na udino na nkama say no.
Anka Jimmy. So when bibia en ha me. Obi bibia na ha me say the friend Anka Jimmy. I don't know. Ana me ga name so de unyo ba Jimmy akwase bia ya wakonta. Ene me ga name. So wa ga. Yinu ma ya ba yi. Wo aro de obi aba bra we na me no. No ni na ba no ja no. No sa ko sa. Dunya ba Jimmy a. What's the BS before me?
Obidi biafa when you asked.
Oh, maybe
okay. So, just summarizing what my father here is telling us, he's saying that initially he said he didn't have faith in the NDC government to, make things easier for them as traders. But he's open that the finance minister can introduce measures that will make the trading easy for them, even though there's a plethora of traders selling the same things and making the market difficult to maintain. But we'll see how the finance minister goes about his request. And then we have here also Elder.
Yeah.
Elder now also to say Niama Bensa na Oton.
Nyamiadum me ton radiator. The car a shaka finfia yedi nsuo egum. Na enne no ho asem ka no eyeden kakra. Sense importers na the bar every day omoton. Nti ema yen so ayewo ha no ne ton aya na eyeden kakra edema yen. Nti the mehwe ene finance minister amano abeboa yen taxes bia ka so mbeyi free society taxes any say levy any betting tax no na me de na ka mi susuye mo pa say ke yi betting tax na say levy na isa say ye free education no ne person free education no ekọ na anim no enka say emfa say free education levy emum emra na emeyi say levy ne betting tax ne nyere say de betting make me aboa sika no etimi aye education na ma education no NDC ni ho na MPP ni ho ye nyina ye Ghana fo enti eba ne sa ebeboa ama education etimi aye den akona ni
unu akase o jazz kase ono so say taxes ni yin from me fa from ba onso so say yan fa free education levy bra ye bia from onso so say yan fa from ka
ye yi mi enu mi ansan nan na ba ku be hyemu a eno no mi hu se eye bone ana eno empacho ye eno no ye na adwen me so ma adwen kire eno no se enko ye ni se ya ebema de bia da na ye se ye ntua ye wo free AJS adept any ade no na ema yi ko strike any ade ye binye sika de den etua on na ka se ye yi ni nyina fi wo no ma sika na ekwe isi ye so IMF meaning ya chiche wonsa guwashi enti esesa we kwanya be fa so a ubetimi ubehin ha ye nyina ho hin ha ya ebe boa yen ama yetimi akoye ni enti me hwe kwan se ye meka nso na ye mfe nkwose ketase na emum no ye beye na aboa ye nyina eno ne ma adwen kire.
So this is Elder. He deals in radiators, excuse me, and he is hoping that those taxes, levies as well, will be scrapped off. But interestingly, he wants a free education tax.
The expectations of traders who are in here to also listen to the finance minister, Dr. Kisiala Tvucc, present the budget to Parliament. We know that the finance minister is currently inside the August House and is expected to present the budget in no time. These are tailors who are in the KGTR market, glued to the Joy News channel. They are currently watching, expecting the finance minister to in no time also deliver. This is the first budget of the John Dramani Mahama administration for his second term. We've been in here engaging them and they've been sharing their momentum and their expectations. But we still have to expect the finance minister to touch on some of the things that they expect him to touch on, as he's expected to in no time present the budget. Me sure say what's it from him already, say finance minister not say ba. And then my ben now share him.
You know I say I never want to be boy. I never boy as na media to say taxes no more. And what I say, no, too much some near the idea. Go bit betting taxi, where you to the only say bet none the eligible.
so bana say boss no be here from my inquiry ye penesa ade here no
now we have to say already what my indications betting tax no on be for 11 so no possibly so a bit means apart from the taxes now we no step on and in my bed now Ashanti region especially no bit me
but no aduma and na makro no do so bete mobile money for ni kumbi ni ade because ya ho kire ya you know say ya ho kire ka bi sade ne de ko faba nti aduma ye aduma se aduma bana yeso ye ho beto ye ebi di say central market ti o mo nsi oba ye o so be he no ye tana be ya ye bi nya aduma because se me ma nya aduma me ho kire me se pe ma ko bokro no se me se no se me aduma nko se na de na o se me ye ko mo di ka bia sana ma ko enti ye aduma be ma aduma ba ye ho beto ye sana me hu no.
So some of the things that he's saying is that the finance minister should scrap the betting tax. It must be touched on by the Mahama administration and also completed. Unemployment is also a problem for him as a youth, and that government should also find a way of curbing unemployment. I'm also with another gentleman here who is also watching the TV waiting for the finance minister to go ahead with the budget presentation. Before the finance minister no about back budget no me sure say one kasa woni me bia resting onka ode or beka se the bear also so akoma betimi ato yem ene ma be na o hwe ni mo se
me da sepa ni nya ba man da so amasa ko nya we no you President John Dramani Mahama the kind of name be to dwa so oba betting tax net tax bi o be year free so by me ahwe na anima untimi nsa anya ma no yes financial minister say abra obey yes no betting tax in the teacher and there hear me pa because me go try bet 100 cities na say me dino bet me na say me no mu ma me bia benefit bia there me say financial minister say no there when you from my strena because you nyam for so bia so then man getting tax
from Kumasi, welcome back to the Joy News studio here. And Doc, please still stay with me quickly because we have some inside scoop and could you answer this on standby to share the scoop? I myself cannot
Well, I can tell you that our sources very high up in the finance ministry have confirmed a few things that we will be hearing today. First of all, the e-levy and betting tax are definitely gone. The COVID tax is, let's call it, going. Because COVID tax is part of, the COVID levy is part of VAT. And the government wants to restructure the whole of the VAT system because it's not quite right. There are problems with it that go far beyond just removing one of its elements, which is the COVID levy. So it is going to be removed. We're expecting that by the mid-year review, we'll hear that the COVID levy is no more, but it requires the entire restructuring of the VAT for that to happen. So today we'll hear of the e-levy and betting tax completely gone, which is quite a lot of money. Okay, the betting tax is 5.2 billion Ghana cedis, and the e-levy is 8.1 billion Ghana cedis. Both of them gone. All right, but 13.9 billion of COVID levy will have to wait until perhaps halfway through the year.
It's important to note that while it goes, the key question we've always asked since last year was, once you take it out, what do you do to plug the hole? And again, sources close to the finance ministry say they found an ingenious way to do this, and they'll be detailing that in the budget, which I thought was quite a brilliant one to think.
Indeed, yeah. Summarize it. We've got 10 seconds. We can summarize it.
Give us the insights.
So what they've decided to do, they have an account at GRE. Okay. It's called the tax refund account. It's a holding account. Basically, instead of sending all the taxes they collect to government, what they do is that they keep 6% of all tax, okay, all revenue, all right, and they use that to refund those who file their taxes and pay too much.
Yes.
Okay. Now, it was originally supposed to be 6% of VAT, but Parliament made it 6% of all revenue, which means they've been collecting far more than they need. Okay. So what happens here? 6% of all tax. Sorry. So what happens is that about 40% of it gets paid out as refunds. 60% doesn't. So that 60% in itself is far more than these three taxes put together.
And more specifically, they found that it has accrued more than 30 billion cedis in that account.
Over the past 8 years.
Exactly, over 30 billion in there. So there's a lot of money there. And the e-levy alone is bringing just 6 billion. Right? So you can actually take care of the what you're losing from scrapping, and you still have a bit more. But the additional revelation in there that we probably will learn about is what the previous government did with that particular account.
Yeah.
And that for me, it's what is fascinating to learn when we get the details. But under the leadership of the finance minister, they found it and thought, but this money sits in there, we're not even using it for the actual purpose, because you can actually take care of all the tax refunds and you still have a huge pool still left to take care of other things. You know what I mean?
Help me with a bit of economics here and speak basic English, because I would have thought that tax refunds would have been for organizations or institutions who may have overpaid, and then there'll be tax refunds to them. How is this accrued to the government of Ghana?
No, so you have to create a fund to bring the money in.
Okay.
And then when there is a legitimate case to refund, you go into the fund. Pool. Exactly, and refund. Okay. And it's not just organizations, it's individuals too. Sometimes they give you an assessment, right? And then you overpay. Only for them to now do an audit and realize that you were actually overbilled, right? It nearly happened to me, so I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
When you go through that process of arbitration and you win, they'll have to refund the excess. That is where government takes the money from. But remember, it is you are projecting that you will spend X amount of money on refunds in a year. It doesn't mean that you actually end up spending all that amount. The question is, what do you do with the money that is sitting in there that you didn't have to use to refund? That is where they say we can actually use that excess to take care of the hole that will be left when you eliminate
COVID levy
and still have change.
And still have change.
Yeah.
So very ingenious, and they're taking it away. My mother told me something 2 days ago. I wanted to send her money, and she said, "I've heard that Kesla Tvucc is about to scrap the e-levy." He says, "I should not send the money. I should wait till after the budget before I send the money." It makes sense, right? I didn't think about it. I thought I was just going to spend 20 CDs to 30 CDs to send the money extra in e-levy. But she said, no. Wait, after. Why? Because she didn't want me to spend that 30 CDs on what I'm sending her. All it's costing me I can bear, right? That is why it has to go. And that is why they're going to do it. But that's why they're also plugging it with very ingenious ways. Okay. And this whole autonomics thing, I think, is pretty interesting.
Speaking of autonomics, here's something else that he's figured out.
Okay.
He's figured out how to pay for free SHS.
Okay.
So he's going to uncap, which meant that Get Fund wasn't getting to use all the money that we were paying for it to be used. Also, the previous government collateralized the capped amount, which means that in addition to Get Fund not having all of its money, they were also paying for some debt.
But you also calculate Get Fund when you're calculating your VAT, though.
Yes.
Give me a moment. I'll go to Dr. Priscilla Chumezi, who is still with us here on Zoom. You've heard what our special scoop my two sniffers have just been sharing with us here, and also what you've heard about the energy minister saying that we need about 80 billion. Energy sector really is one of those sectors that sends shivers down the spine of every Ghanaian. You're an economist. If you're a genie and has some special power, what would you really be expecting that the finance minister will be doing with the energy sector? Is it worth it that we reinvest in the energy sector? Whilst you're at it, please share your thoughts on this scoop that we have just found.
Thank you. I think that I am not surprised that the COVID levy is not leaving because it ought to be carefully thought through before such a big move is made. But for the betting tax, I think I indicated my position. Is unfortunate. I think the government has the goodwill to still keep it. Young people would forgive the government if they keep it because, it's a tax on revenue, and as a matter of principle, it should be kept. In terms of the issues within the energy sector, I think that there's a need for a complete overhaul of these state-owned institutions. The energy sector and the agri sector, Cocoa Board, are two major SOEs that needs to be completely overhauled in terms of their objectives, in terms of their mode of operation. Within the the energy sector model, there is the argument for increased private sector participation. I think that is something that should be encouraged, but that said, it is a very important state, what do we call it, state enterprise. You cannot leave your energy supply in the hands of the private sector who would solely be motivated by profits. And so in that context, a lot needs to be done, but there is the need for us to recover at least whatever investments that are made in the sector. I'm not an energy expert, so I cannot pretend to know too much as to what goes in there. But increased private sector participation is what is needed. But when we talk about private sector participation, is it domestic? Is it foreign? Those are important issues that we need to look at, because most of the times, the capital requirements that is needed to go into such a sector in a PPP, you do not find those kinds of investors domestically. And that is when issues of national security comes in. If you are letting such an important institution like that go into the hands of foreigners. But these are issues that I think the energy experts have an idea of as to how to implement that. I'm also expecting, the reintroduction of road tolls. I think they should automate the process, make it more efficient, but it's important that Ghanaians get back into the habit of contributing something towards the maintenance and building of quality roads. And in that aspect, the expenditure rollout, with taxation, when people are paying, they need to see that their monies are working for them. Is that what we see? When it comes to property taxes, do we see improvements in our neighborhoods when people are paying property taxes? Those are the issues of the chicken and egg situation that policymakers are faced with. But I think that overall, we are all anxious to see, and yeah.
I've also seen that members of parliament standing, hoping that the finance minister is making his way into parliament. But Kojo, just before I went to Doc, you were just sharing with me, and then I was saying that in calculating VAT, yes, there's a percentage. Then you have to now calculate the get fund, calculate NHIL too, in addition, and even the COVID levy. Many have said that that's quite regressive.
Well, I mean, look, that's what it is, and it needs to be revamped, which is what they say they will do. The finance minister will announce that. But what they've done, which is significant, is that they've uncapped these funds, Get Fund and NHIL. Now, these funds, what it means is that whatever they collect from us, they don't give all of it to the institutions to do its work. They've capped it, so some of it doesn't go. So there's a 70% cap on Get Fund, right? They've removed that now. They're going to announce the removal of that cap, which means Get Fund gets more money. Also, the original capped amount used to be collateralized and government was borrowing against it. That debt has now been absorbed by government, which means Get Fund doesn't have to keep paying it.
Hang in a moment. So you can see on your screen, it would be that Parliament has just suspended sitting for 5 minutes, and then we'll resume shortly in Parliament to bring you everything that's happening in there. Evans would come back to the wall and continue with the discussion, but could you remind us this point
really quickly? Yes. Okay, so that means Get Fund has more money. Now, the uncapped amount, the extra money that they will get, that money now is about 4.6 billion Ghana cedis.
That's some money.
The bill for free SHS is 3.5 billion.
We have a change of about
900 million, which they can now use to pay for those persons with disabilities in tertiary institutions. So you see, they end up fulfilling two promises with one action by uncapping Get Fund alone. NHIL also gets uncapped, which means they get extra funds. Now, we are happy they are removing taxes, but one tax is going to be added. It's the economic rent on the gold sector. So only those in the massive mining operations will be affected by this. Originally, we were paying some 1% economic rent. It's going up to 2%, which makes sense.
Explain English, please.
All right. Basically, it's like a tax that was levied on the big gold mining companies. It was about 1% of what they were making. It's now going up to 2%. Now, it's good because gold prices are going up across the world.
Task or value thing, it's holding firm and going up. Last year, it went all the way up. This is projected to go up again. So you're going to make a lot more money. We plug a lot of these holes. This 27.9 billion over the period of 25 to 2027 that you will lose from all the scrapping that you will do. You can make that back instantly.
With this particular economic...
And you do that and not betting the ordinary guy.
Which is
and that is the ingenious part of this. You're doing that and not betting the ordinary guy because the incidence is not borne by any of us. The guy's already making a killing from the mining that they do and the gold and etc. And say, pay one more. None of them can say they won't pay. If they do, they're going to be standing against the millions who say, but why don't you pay your fair share of all that you're making?
Well, it's a bread and butter issue, right? Go on.
A lot of existing programs, one district, one factory is gone. They are going to scrap Ghana Cares. All right, they're going to take the money that was earmarked for these programs and redirect them into more of the promises that they made to the people of Ghana.
Wait a minute, Evans, what does this mean? one district, one factory. What about project continuity, which Dr. Stephen Amwa was just telling Judge Wefi that
it's about industrialization. You can actually still fix the industrial challenges without having a policy that necessarily says you must have one district, one factory in a district. And we make the point earlier when that policy was introduced that every district deserves a factory. It's a key question you need to ask yourself.
What about the ones that have started and they're
but of course, those will be nurtured. You're not abandoning those that actually started. What you're saying is this government's policy is we don't believe that we need to put a factory in every district because you have a policy that says tick a box, then necessarily put a factory in a district, even though the district hasn't got what it takes to host a factory. The Commander Sugar Factory is a classic example of that. We built it there. They've learned their lesson, right? Yeah. I mean, it's the same government that did that. We built it there. You didn't have the raw materials around that could feed it. It's become
it went to hibernation, yes.
So now they're saying that lesson says you cannot put a factory everywhere, but you can actually then become a bit more strategic in where you're putting your factory, linked to raw materials, linked to labor. Then you're maximizing the outcomes from that factory. Then you save money to do other things.
So then they're rationalizing that particular policy.
And remember, could you just a final thing? This same one factor is the reason why the previous government went to Parliament for a $400 million tax rebate.
Okay.
And that generated a whole lot of controversy. Anybody remember that? Is the reason why it was rumored that the former chair of the Finance Committee, the former Deputy Finance Minister, Kweku Kwarteng, was removed. Yeah. Because he didn't believe that $400 million the government was pushing, the tax rebate that they were going to give to these factory companies was a prudent thing to do. And he actually told me that publicly, that he just disagreed with his own government, which is quite unique. The government now is saying, you're going to save all that. Because that's money that would have come to us through taxes on the ports, etc., that it was not going to come $400 million worth. That now you can plow back into the economy, easy for other things.
You know what else is gone? The Northern, Middle, and Coastal Belt Authorities. You remember those institutions that were set up to institute some of these programs, like one constituency, $1 million, and so forth. Those are gone. Now, you have to think of the amounts of money that government was funneling through those authorities in order to execute their mandates, okay? Huge amounts of money. Those authorities are now non-existent. Government will institute anything that they were doing, which needs to continue, through the DCEs and MCEs. I believe there is no reason why that can't continue, why people can still get to benefit from all of those initiatives without having to set up entire authorities and employ people to work there in order to execute these mandates. One more thing, import taxes. There will be some rationalization around that, and we'll be hearing some specific announcements from the finance minister about that. That's very important to traders. You've heard from the spare parts dealers talking about how it is utterly ridiculous that they have to spend more than 50% of the cost of what they are importing just to get it through the gate at Tema. And they don't understand that. So the finance minister is certainly going to be bringing some clarity and rationalization, hoping that this will result in importation through Ghana not being almost twice as expensive as importing through our neighbors. And you know what that causes? It means that we end up diverting revenue to our neighbors. Who wants that?
I guess I understand why the gentleman from the Abusokai spare part dealership says that Uncle Jimmy, really, because then they're going to be saving some money. But Evan, with the analysis on this
and so that's just on the back of all the taxes that will go and how they're going to make up for what they're going to lose, and they found a way to do it. And So we're going to hear the specifics. And of course, they look at the growth rate. It's something that they want to deal with also. You want to send this continuing rising from 5.6, and they want to keep this trajectory. I had Tvucc the last time at the economic dialogue talk about medium-term 6% growth, long-term more radical reforms where this continues the projection. So they're going to put in place policies that hopefully keeps this trajectory going for 2025 and beyond. But this sector is a very important sector, obviously, right? Because it employs majority of our people that are struggling. 2024 is dipped from 5.99, it's come to 2.3. And this is a great sector, by the way. And the growth is dwindling. They have to revive the sector.
What are the factors that contributed to?
I mean, and this is actually very interesting irony, right? And a good question. This is the time that we saw implementing the plan for food and jobs. Which was actually supposed to be the opposite: improve growth, employ more people, but most importantly, mechanize agriculture. We've been talking about this since I was a child. It hasn't actually happened. The one district, one dam,
one village, one
dam initiative was part of this. Create the dams. Why? Because when it's the dry season, you still need to plant.
For irrigation.
It's fundamental irrigation. That hasn't really picked up. We all saw this with that. And so, of course, if you have that challenge, of course, this is what's going to happen. And we have in this budget to put in some stimulus into the agri sector and bring this growth back up. And that is a very important point.
And actually, among the scoops we have is the fact that the finance minister intends to announce a marked increase in expenditure in the agri sector.
Okay.
They are going to allocate a lot more than ever before. And one of the big expenditure items there in ensuring that all of the land, or most of the land on which we are growing the food that Ghana needs is going to have irrigation. This is another thing we've been hearing about since primary school, right? But here's the truth. The water that we need for the irrigation is being polluted by Galamsey. So we need to figure that out, and God alone knows how much that will cost.
And here's the thing. Yesterday, I was speaking to the environment minister who was on my show, PMS, last night. They have, in the budget that we're about to hear, Dr. Tvucc will announce an amount to help the fight against Galamsey. So they're going to, in the budget now, one of the reasons why the previous government withdrew the soldiers from the forest, because it was costing a lot. To fund the operations, to keep them there. It was costing quite a bit. But it's not a cost-benefit analysis. You need to sustain this over time because the guys, they are waiting you out in the forest. Right? And it is about who has to metal, who will blink first. You know the country is struggling. You don't have the power to keep them there. So you would eventually lose stamina. In this budget, at least for the 2025, they want to find money for it. That then sustained it throughout the year. The question whether that will be enough or not, we'll see.
Now, Evans, do you mind going back a little bit? Just one of the slides you had earlier, for those of you watching on Joy News, just before the agric slide. This one, the one about growth. Now, you can see here, you remember just before President Akufo-Addo left office, he actually proudly said that growth levels have gone back to pre-COVID times, right? So our growth has resumed its health that it had before COVID. Well, I have a question. How much of that growth is fueled by Galamsey?
Okay.
Because gold is a very big item in our growth. It's growing fast. So how much of it is Galamsey?
We'll get some questions to that, some answers to that question. And Evans, when we come back, we'll go back to the agric slide. And on the value chain for agriculture will be transportation. And so we'll see how much bearing transport will have on the agriculture. But we'll go for a quick break. This is the special coverage of the 2025 budget presentation that will be happening in Parliament pretty shortly. Do stay with us.
transactions don't pay.
Especially with the deputy coming at the two ends. I seek your
Honorable Member, this is the correct designation. He is a deputy attorney general and also a deputy minister at the Ministry of Justice. That is the correct designation. May we go on now? Page 14. Yes, please.
Honorable Speaker, on page 14, item 16 motion, the second sentence. The Honorable Second Deputy Speaker to the Chair. Deputy is missing, if you could be inserted. And the same applies to the next sentence, so consequential.
Table of page 16. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. On page 16, item 9I, name number 11. Honorable Professor Grace.
Page 16.
Page 16.
Yes.
Name number 11. Item 9I. That's Committee of Selection.
Oh, you're talking about item 19, not 9. 19I.
19I, Mr.
Yes,
Speaker.
please.
I'm guided.
Yes.
The arrangement of the title, I see some inconsistency. In some, I know for the standard in our votes and proceedings, we usually have the title, the professor, coming at the end of the name and in brackets. But in this arrangement, the arrangement is different, Honorable Professor. And I see that again on page, we haven't gotten to page 22, but I have seen that repeated several times. So if there could be some consistency with the arrangement, I think that would be helpful, Mr. Speaker.
It doesn't come up.
Thank you.
Honorable Member will take note of that. Page 17. Page 18. Yes, please.
Okay, so thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Page 18. Page 18. Item 11 and 12 has been repeated. Honorable Alfred Ni Koteyashi. It's both at 11 and 12. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, my attention has been drawn by the chief whips to the fact that there have been some mistakes, errors in the list that was submitted and approved. I think it was on Friday. Yes. And so they are working at it and they will come back to us properly. So we await that. So if you identify some of the issues you are raising,